have a request. Can I request everyone to please say this word after me? Say heritage. Heritage. Now, would be the core of my talk. What is really heritage? So heritage could be tangible or intangible. Well, but in its easiest term, I would like to say that heritage talks about ideas or objects that would talk about our past. These objects and ideas are things that have value and that these values continues from generation to generation. Like for example, you see this? This is a ring. For example, there's a Lola who passed on this ring to her daughter, and then during her marriage, he will also pass it on to another set of generation, which is her daughter. And then, as you look at this, this is an intangible concept of heritage. For example, there are stories in the family that you also want to pass on to the next. So maybe heritage can be easily understand when you translate it in Filipino. Heritage in Filipino, it's pamana. Can you say that word, pamana? So pamana, ano nga ba yung mga bagay na gusto nating ipamana sa susunod na generation? Ito ba yung mga bagay na katulad ng mga kwento, katulad ng mga material na bagay? And again, like what I said earlier, it could be tangible or intangible. So, at least in my advocacy, the term heritage pertains to things that are tangible. For example, maybe you're very familiar with this one. This is Rizal Park, and it's very historic. And for example, this is Torogan in Mindanao. It's also part of our heritage, and it's a century old. And also, a very interesting place in the Philippines that are considered heritage, it's vegan. So these things are part of our heritage. It could be houses, could be buildings, it could be monuments and sites. And in these structures, we share stories and memories. Like for example, maybe you see this in movies and maybe you see it somewhere in the Philippines, like this is an old house in Maragondon, Cavite. Maybe you will be remembered of probably a story of a certain person who would say that dito yung lola niya, pinalaki niya dito yung kanyang mga anak. At the same time, yun din yung nanay at mga tita ko, dito rin namin pinalaki yung kanilang mga anak. And in these structures, we create stories and memories. Like for example, as you see this building, it's Metropolitan Theater in Manila. Maybe you guys have seen that along the way here. And then, maybe you're remembered by the plays or concerts that were used to held there. But as you can see, it's neglected. And then, the glory days of the past are not being given its due prestige because it's neglected. The memories are forgotten and memories are being ignored. So these structures are silent witnesses of our past. And stories can either be, let's face it, stories can either be negative or positive. Like for example, again, this is Rizal Park, and at the bottom left you see a negative story, which is the execution of Jose Rizal. While on the left, for some people, it's also a positive thing because Luneta is also a place where you guys should hang out. Maybe your parents used to date your dad, or your mom used to date your dad in that park. So some stories are subjective, but then it creates memories to all of us. It may be negative or positive. So here, what do you see? This is Baclayon Church in Bohol. And as an advocate, we also encountered stories that it could be positive and also negative. For example, positive because there are success stories of heritage sites that are being well maintained by their families. Like for example, ancestral house that are being used as a tourist destination. Or maybe it could also be negative, like you see demolitions all over the place. You know that while in other countries, they preserve their heritage, here in the Philippines, we are faced by many destructions. It could be demolition at the same time, acts of God, like natural disasters, fires, and earthquakes. As you can see here, let me share you a story. I remember a friend of mine told me that he has a friend, and then what this friend said he called his relative when the 2013 earthquake struck. And then, tinawagan niya yung kanyang relative, sabi niya, oh, kumusta na yung mga kumusta na yung mga kamag-anak natin, kumusta na yung bahay natin? Yes, they're all okay. That's what he answered. But, the church is gone. What does it tell us? That, church has a big impact in their community. That it's part of their identity, maybe as Boholanos or as Cebuanos. It is also in these churches, in these structures, that they created memories like baptisms, marriages. So these are part of their heritage. What do you see? This is one of the biggest issues in heritage conservation. You see Rizal Park, and there's a photo bomber behind it. It's Torre de Manila. And then what do you see on the right? You see people having fun, and they are, that's actually during one of the Islamic holidays. And then these Muslims are celebrating their holidays in Rizal Park. What does this tell us? We know that Rizal Park is a very important place for us as Filipinos. But when you talk about memories, when you talk about stories, when you see this building, as we create memories in that area, when you see that building, it's not part of the original memories that we have in that area. We don't see that photo bomber. That's why maybe in the next coming days, this structure would also be, yes, let's face it, it could be a part of the next story of this place. But the danger is it could also ruin the memories that we had in this place. So yun lang. Are there any condominium developers in the house? Peace tayo. So usually the advocacy of heritage conservation, which I'm a part of, is usually considered as elitist. Oh, you guys are talking about things that are in the past. These buildings are owned by rich people, and these things are only relevant to you guys. You are the older ones. What about us? That we don't actually relate to these structures. But then again, these structures are existing today. These are present structures that remind us of our past. And what does it tell us as present generations here in the Philippines? We are responsible to actually preserve these structures and at the same time the memories that are in these structures. So, have you seen this picture? Have you seen this building before? This is Army Navy Club. It's a building also close to Rizal Park. And as you can see, they're demolishing the inner structures of this building. Well, what does this tell us? When it comes to the issues of demolition in the heritage conservation advocacy, aside from saving the structures, we're also saving the memories behind these structures. And when you rip up some of the important details of that structures, the other stories that are in that structures are also gone. And ironically, this building is also right beside an old building, and it's called Museo Pambata. Have you guys been there? So Museo Pambata is a museum dedicated for children. And then, by the way, this building, the Army Navy Club, it's planned to be converted as a hotel, at the same time a casino. So ironically, what does it tell you to the neighboring building? That a building that is dedicated to children, and then you see a casino over right beside it. So what is the culture that you want to share to the next generation? Is it for entertainment purposes? So are there casino developers in the house? So how can you actually make these rather old and dilapidated structures relevant to all of us? So this is where I'm going to show you and to tell you a story of some of the activities that I did as an advocate of heritage. So this is, as you can see, these are kids. These are kids. And apparently they're inside an old house. And this house is called Bahay ng Kalye Bautista. And Bahay ng Kalye Bautista is a house where Gregoria de Jesus, who is the widow of Andres Bonifacio, used to live. Well, you know, Gregoria de Jesus, yeah, she stayed there. But how does it relate to me? I am a kid and I don't, well, yeah, fine, it's something about history, but it's not really relevant to me. But in my organization, Kapitbahayan sa Kalye Bautista, what we did is we brought in the kids in the area of Quiapo. Binondo is in Quiapo. And we brought the kids inside. And what we did is we taught them things that they don't usually see. Or we taught them things that they don't usually study at school. For example, we taught them skills on photography, basic lang, and also painting, music, these things that they don't usually learn in school. And through these stories, through these memories, that's how we make a rather old and haunted house relevant to these kids. So, right beside Bahay Nakpil, this is Boix house. It's spelled B-O-I-X. And that's me. So, as you can see, it's an old house. It's a 100-year-old house. And you can see it's dilapidated, it's old, and it's not being well maintained. But what did our organization do to actually raise awareness about this house, to make it relevant to the people, especially the community, who are responsible to actually preserve these structures? So we did some very simple efforts, like cleaning the house up. Because when we went there, we saw there were lots of garbage. It was all vandalized. It was very dirty, dusty. But what we did, we made simple efforts to actually raise awareness, even on social media. You can like the page Boix House Redux. And these are the people behind the organization. That's me over there. And these are my team. And we are mostly composed of young professionals and students. So even for younger ones, heritage can be relevant. And a recent breakthrough, we were able to apply the Boix House to an international body of an advocacy program called the World Monuments Watch. Hopefully, this would be a platform so that the story of Boix House would actually be relevant to the public, especially to the global society. Actually, in the past, we started from scratch. We also did some research, and we found out that there were also poets, there were also printing presses that were used to be houses in this area. So, starting from scratch, we will know the stories behind these houses and heritage sites. And we can also be creative in telling the memories, the stories behind our heritage. For example, you could see this. This is a Maranao Torogan. Like the Lego that was mentioned earlier, it's a Lego type of building blocks. So that's one way to actually share to the people na we have these kinds of architecture. These are part of our heritage. And that you can have fun while learning about our heritage. So you can also like their page. So you can see this on the left. Why is it important that these structures are restored? Aside from the stories that are inside these structures, why is it important that these structures are restored? Because we're also restoring the memories. We're also bringing back the prestige. We are staying true to the original glory of these houses or of these buildings. Like for example, this is Luneta Hotel, built in 1918, but after that, fast forward to a few years before, it was neglected and it was not well maintained. But in 2014, they were able to restore it, and you can see that it's well restored. So maybe related to Taft Avenue. So we are TEDxTaftAve. This is La Salle, my alma mater. So this is back in 1929. So you could see tree-lined, and it's clean, no traffic, no LRT yet. And you could see this driveway where the students drive their way to school. And then fast forward to late 1990s, they constructed this building. They call it a conservatory, and it blocks off the facade of the building. So you couldn't really appreciate the facade of the building. So what does it tell us? That the story and the Lasallian heritage is not being well preserved, and it's not being given its due prestige. But through a renewal plan, they were able to demolish the building in front of it. And actually, the St. LaSalle Hall, the heritage building of LaSalle, it's also considered as the 1001 buildings to see before you die. It is the only Philippine entry in that book. So as you can see, they did the restoration, and this is how it looks like now. It's very nice. So that's how you restore that's how you restore the memories at the same time restoring the prestige of the building. And why is it also important that these stories behind these structures are continued to be shared and being remembered? I'll share you a photo of these two ladies. They're living in a heritage house. And then I want to focus this picture on the left. This is Aling Lola Loli. She kept on telling me stories about the glory days of Quiapo, and at the same time, how they played with her playmates during the Japanese occupation. And actually, this Burke building is a century-old building. And then, in 1939, that's where she was born. And then, there are lots of memories inside that house. And what happened, the last encounter of mine with Aling Loli, I told her, babalik po ako, let's continue to tell stories about this building, all the memories that you have. But unfortunately, after a few weeks, she died. So what does this tell us? Na there are memories that can be forgotten, and it's important that these stories are remembered and are told because there will be someone that will always pass it on to the next generation. So I'm honored that I've heard some of her stories. So what can you do? Maybe you have come to the point that, yes, I want to learn about my heritage. I want to create more stories about our heritage, about these places, about these heritage structures. So these are some of the activities that we've done in my organization, Heritage Conservation Society Youth. And you can also like our page, by the way. So this is me touring some students in Escolta. It's a few kilometers away from here. So it's full of heritage buildings in the district. So we told the stories behind these buildings. One way, awareness is a first step to actually share the message of our heritage. And this is in my neighborhood. I live in Binondo, and it's in its historic corridor called San Nicolas. So behind us is a building, or it's an old house with clay tile roofs. And we don't usually see that here in Manila. It's actually the only existing structure with those clay tile roofs here in Manila. So I was able to bring in at least 50 participants. I'll be sharing you two different perspectives about why we should continue to tell stories and how can these structures be relevant to all of us. I'll share to you this one. This is Pamintuan Mansion in Angeles, Pampanga. And you see there are students. And Pamintuan Mansion is now converted to become the Museum of Philippine Social History. And one of my friends, who is the curator of the museum, told me, and she posted this on Facebook. And what she told us is these girls commented during their stay, I would rather stay here than to go to malls because in this place, it's historic, and at the same time, I'm also learning about our history. We can play traditional games like sungka, and you can see they're playing chess, and they're really having fun, as you can see. So, and above all, as compared to malls, meron ding aircon dito. So there. So, it's never too young for you to discover our heritage, to create more memories, create more stories behind these structures. Next one, I'll be showing you this fellow heritage advocate of mine, Sir Ivan Mandy, and with him is his grandma, and they visited the National Museum, which is also a heritage building because it's the former Congress of the Philippines. And at the age of 93, it was her first time to actually see the spolarium and other artworks inside the building. At the same time, enjoying the heritage that we have. Because you can see in one of the buildings there, it's very grand. It makes you proud of your heritage. So in this perspective, it's also, for the older ones in the house, it's never also too old for you guys to discover our heritage. So what's your story? In many places, think about the things that you've been through, and think about the places that you've been to, and think about the memories, the stories that you have there. In fact, actually right now, we're also creating a story inside a heritage building. This very building is a 1931 building. Maybe it's modern looking as it is, but they were able to restore it as a museum of history of ideas. And maybe faithful to the idea of TED, which is to spark ideas worth preserving, were actually inside the Museum of the History of Ideas. So there you go. Through creating stories, we create values and we create memories. And these stories and memories contributed to the value of a heritage building. And then, again, like what I said earlier, awareness is the first step to saving our heritage. And how can you save your heritage if you're not aware of it? And through this creating of stories, we're able to save our heritage. And through this, we are led to say that the future of our heritage lies in you and me and in all of us.